Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. It's been a week of watching and waiting. Over the weekend, it was announced that there will be a meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on December 29th in Florida to discuss the second stage of the Gaza ceasefire deal and the outline for Gaza's reconstruction. There, finally, Trump is expected to lay out the administration's approach to advancing the Gaza plan and explain how decisions on the issue will be made and who will make them. And at the same time, in New York, the city is heading into the Christmas holidays ahead of the swearing in of a new mayor, Zohran Mamdani, the man who has divided the city's Jewish community between progressives who are excited about his charisma, energy, and policies, and much of the mainstream Jewish community, which is worried and unhappy about how an anti-Zionist mayor supportive of the BDS movement will affect the community and the fight against anti-Semitism. Controversy flared even before he took office, with the resignation of an appointee just hours after the ADL exposed anti-Semitic comments that the appointee made online more than a decade ago. With all of that going on, my guest on the podcast today is a woman who has been active in setting the cultural agenda in New York for over 40 years. Susan Engel is executive director of the renowned 92nd Street Y Talks. Over her tenure there, the venue has hosted names like Daniel Day-Lewis, Scarlett Johansson, Oprah Winfrey, Hillary Clinton, Yuval Noah Harari. Among the long-running series she has created were Jewish and Israel Talks. They feature figures like Yair Lapid, Naftali Bennett, Ehud Barak, and over the past 2 years, she's been curating timely programs on the stage of the Y on the delicate issue of the war in Gaza. Susan is here in Israel, where she served as a judge at the Jerusalem Jewish Film Festival. Our conversation is coming up.
I'm Esther Solomon, Editor-in-Chief of Haaretz English. Around the world, the fight is on to preserve critical and independent media. Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, upholds its long tradition of accurate, committed, and incisive journalism, refusing to bend its reporting to pressure from any government or leader. A digital subscription to Haaretz gives you up-to-the-minute news and analysis in English from journalists who live Israel's reality and are committed to covering the Middle East and its global repercussions. At the same time, your subscription supports the cause of a free press that holds the powerful to account in Israel and around the world. I invite you to become a subscriber to Haaretz now. Just go to Haaretz.com and use the code Haaretz10, that's Haaretz with the number 10, for 10% off an annual subscription.
Susan Engel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Susan, you have what a lot of people imagine would be a dream job. You find interesting people, you look for interesting topics, and you put them all together on stage to have an interesting conversation. And not just any stage, in the middle of Manhattan at the 92nd Street Y, which is a rather unique institution, and I understand the only place that you've ever worked?
Yes, I started in 1982, before there were computers on the desk. And I got my ideas at the time from speaking to publishers. It was the first time anybody really went out and looked to bring authors who were nonfiction authors to the Y. After that, we also started to have film screenings, and we really wanted to be a place where we built community based on interests. So if you were interested in politics or film or fashion, you had a place to go. And as well as dealing with many topical subjects such as what was going on in the world and over the years, and having journalists, and our series in the news with Jeff Greenfield. And then we built another series. After time, these programs grew, and now we have over 200 talks a year. We're a 150-year-old Jewish cultural organization that began by German Jews in 1874. But we have a storied history that we started locally with Jews from, as I mentioned, from Germany, trying to serve the community, the immigrant community. And we had many interesting greats start out with us. In 1883, Emma Lazarus, who wrote the poem, "Give Me Your Tired, You're Poor," which is on the Statue of Liberty, She taught English to new immigrants at the 92nd Street Y. We also evolved over time to be a center that reached out to people of all faiths and really become a cultural iconic center. In 1947, we had Tony Curtis, the actor. He premiered a piece at the Y. Harry Belafonte also did that, I think, in 1948. Then in 1960, Alvin Ailey premiered Revelations at the 92nd Street Y. Joan Baez gave one of her first concerts at the 92nd Street Y. So pretty soon you see that we evolved not just in the Jewish world, but in the general cultural world.
And you've been there 40 years. It's not something to take for granted that you moved beyond your neighborhood. You know, once technology kicked in, you moved to television and now the internet and cooperations with Netflix. Was this something that you just knew instinctively from the beginning that you wanted to widen your audience that way?
Definitely. I think we saw ourselves. I also think the pandemic moved things in the direction of having a more international audience. And we had podcasts and events online. Hugh Jackman, we did a program with him when he was in Australia. So in that event, we had a lot of people from Australia tuning in. We've had many different markets that have become more popular. So right now, I think we're up to over 80 million views online from our online material.
I kind of thought to show the kind of atmosphere you have at these 92nd Street Y talks, and also because everybody's talking about him now, and he was Jewish and so important, influential in the culture, an iconic portrayer of New York life. I'd use a poignant example of Rob Reiner, who you hosted in September not that long ago to tell the story of his film This Is Spinal Tap, which he made a follow-up 25 years ago, as we know was killed in a terrible tragedy. So this is how his appearance began with his interviewer on stage, Alan Zwiebel.
It's like Woodstock here. It's great.
Yeah, with all their clothes on, though.
Yeah.
They don't have their clothes.
The evening's young, Rob.
Okay.
Happen.
Yeah, we're going to stir them up into a frenzy.
Rob, this is all for you.
That's what you
They
think.
all came here for you. So my first question is,
Why?
why? Okay. My first question was going to be, when did you meet me? But you killed it by saying why.
No, because, listen, the nicest thing about this for me is that I get to hang out with Alan, who I met 50 years ago. I was hosting the third episode of Saturday Night Live. The first episode was George Carlin, then Paul Simon, and then me. And Alan, who I think you must have been 25 years old. How old were you at the time?
I was 25.
25. So if you do the math,
It works out beautifully.
he's like 70, he's 75 now. I'm a couple years older, 3 years old. And they assigned him to me for the opening monologue, to work together on the opening monologue. And I said, how come they gave me this Jew with a big head and we're gonna come up with something? And we became friends, and we've been friends since then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And his head is still very big.
So when people were eulogizing him, I saw actually a lot of clips for that appearance. It's just an example of putting together an interviewee and the right moderator, the person to ask the questions. How do you go about doing that? You choosing Alan Zwiebel to interview Rob Reiner? Do you ask them? Do you research? How do you figure out who you want asking the questions for the right person?
It depends, and it does require a lot of thought. In this case, they're friends, and oftentimes that would be the first question. Is there someone you want to have interviewed you at the 92nd Street Y? And when they come up with a friend who also will do his research, not just, have a talk, oftentimes those are the best, because you really get a certain intimacy that you won't have with someone who's a journalist or someone who doesn't know them that well. And I think this event, if you watch in its entirety, is very special. I mean, sadly, tragically, it's special because he passed in such a horrible way, horrific way.
So we can't talk about Jewish cultural life in New York City in these times without talking about how complicated it's become since October 7th, 2023. Shortly after that happened, the 92nd Street Y was in the news because you canceled the appearance of a novelist because of his public statements about Israel. And there was this snowball effect. A number of writers who were scheduled to appear at the 92nd Street Y in the coming months announced their intentions to pull out because of that novelist cancellation. And some of your Poetry Center's staffers resigned as a result of this. Did it feel to you, again, you've been there so long, like something different has happened, after 40 years, so many controversies involving Israel, not involving Israel? Was this, a unique situation as what has happened over the past 2 years, something that you've never seen before?
Yes, this was the event you're talking about was with our Poetry Center, so it wasn't an event that I was involved in curating or a program. It's a separate program. I do the nonfiction, the film, the culture, but we have a separate Poetry Center, so I can't speak to the particulars of what happened there, but I do feel that things are different and that we've had to do a soul searching since October 7th around our own Jewish identity, around who we are as a Jewish institution. And I think we've had to double down on our values and what it means to present different views, sometimes critical of Israel. Sometimes we want to be a forum for debate, because it's important to hear what someone else has to say who thinks differently. I think we have the situation in America, as I've heard here, where people tend to tune in to just their own point of view. So they don't hear what someone else may be thinking and may disagree with, but to have a civil dialogue and civil discourse, I think, is so important, and to have institutions that are committed to that and to democracy in our society is so important. We started these Sapir debates with Bret Stephens, and Sapir is an online magazine for Jewish thought. Bret Stephens is a columnist for the op-ed columnist for the New York Times, and they've been fascinating. One of our topics has been, is Trump good for the Jews? Then we had another topic, is there room for Zionists on the American left?
Did you get answers to those questions?
Well, we got maybe more questions, but we polled the audience as they came in, and the audience is more of a Democratic liberal audience than, I would say, Republican, but listening to the other point of view moved the needle a bit. And when we polled them at the end, there was like a 4% change in people's views. And we found that people appreciated it because they were civil. People who really disagree strongly were able to have a conversation and be civil. And I think this is so important these days.
You've got the extremes now. I mean, you've got Donald Trump as president. You've got the incoming mayor, Zohran Mamdani, coming in who, very, very different and polarizing points of view. How do you weigh the free speech? Like, where do you decide? Where are the guardrails? What are the boundaries on the points of view that we're going to have? And imagine, people have such a sense of belonging and ownership of the 92nd Street Y. How do you balance all of that? And I'm sure there are donor considerations as well.
First of all, we do not allow hate speech on. That's number one. That's something, it doesn't mean it won't ever happen where someone would say something that's abhorrent, but we really look at if anybody has said things that, when we do our research, that are homophobic, transphobic, anti-misogynistic, and anything that, if we feel that someone believes that Israel should be destroyed. Those are our red lines. In terms of honest criticism and debate, this is something that is at the core of who we are, and that does mean criticism, even on Israel. We've had quite a few people who vehemently disagree. We had a debate discussion with Sayat Kashua and Peter Beinart when the new Jewish state law, when there was that controversy, and we had Einach Wilf on the other side, and some other very strong proponent of that. It's really important to criticize and also distinguish between what is, as you say, free speech and what crosses the line.
Have you ever had to really debate on whether or not you could have this person or that person come and decided against it?
I do think there have been times where you have, as I mentioned, these are the red lines that we look at.
What about physical security? We hear so much about, Jews, especially Jews in New York, where everybody's in and out of each other's buildings. It's harder with security and gating and everything. Mayor Adams had a big press conference about stepping up security over Hanukkah in New York City. We're all still kind of reeling from the terrible massacre in Australia. You're not far from Columbia University, where there was a lot of action going on. Speaking as a Jewish New Yorker affiliated with a very prominent and public Jewish institution, do you feel like people are afraid?
I don't feel people are afraid in our institution. I think we have such great security. We've really beefed up our security post-October 7th. People have to check your bags. You have to go through, the usual that you would have to go through here. Maybe that we didn't have to do as much in the past, in the States. But we are a Jewish institution. You see NYPD around when we have our high holidays and when we have certain dignitaries come. You can't prevent, you don't know, something could happen anyway. But I do think just having what I consider one of the best security there is, I feel I'm in the best of hands.
On a more cheerful subject, you're here as a judge at the Jewish Film Festival, which just concluded. You've been a judge several times now at the Jerusalem Film Festival. There's the Jewish Film Festival and the Jerusalem Film Festival, which also I'm sure has plenty of Jewish films. What's it like being a judge at these festivals? And as a non-filmmaker, how do you judge what's an award-winning film?
Well, it's interesting. This is my first time coming back to Israel since October 7th. I really appreciate the Jerusalem Cinematheque. I think it's an amazing place, and the Jerusalem Jewish Film Festival. They do an incredible job, which I think is in many ways very similar to what we try to do at the 92nd Street Y, being a place of Jewish culture and continuity and creating a cinematic community. And as someone who is not in that field, I just find it extremely welcoming. Cinema, just like the talks that I mentioned that we have the 92nd Street Y, they're an entry point for anybody to be able to understand where we're at now. They give you glimpses of Jewish life. This particular festival, the films that we were judging had to do with Jewish life in Europe, as well as there was a film from the States. But that's the amazing thing about Israel and the Jewish experience in general, is that you get to see different cultures. They also have programs that they show about the ultra-Orthodox community, the Arab community, and through film is where you can get understanding. And I think it's so important that there be empathy these days. And film is a way to be able to access that in terms of some of these conflicts. And so as a non-film person, I feel I bring a certain cultural taste looking at these films from my years of curating film and bringing films to the 92nd Street Y.
So speaking of films and, culture and controversy, you walked into controversy in the middle of our film world when you came to the festival. Our culture minister, Miki Zohar, has cut off funding for what we consider our Academy Awards. They're called the Ophir Awards, in which the winning film goes and is in the competition for the real Oscars. It gave its top prize this year to a film about a Palestinian boy, and Miki Zohar has said, that's it. We're going to have an alternative film award ceremony. It's going to happen on December 30th in Jerusalem. There's going to be the cash prizes that should have gone to the Ophir Award winners. I mean, the 92nd Street Y also receives some government funding, and we have all kinds of controversies in the States of people who disagree with public radio or public television wanting to cut their funding. What do you think about the mix of culture and politics and the problems when cultural institutions depend heavily on government subsidies?
It could be complicated in terms of the controversy here. It's not something I'm very familiar with, so I can't really speak to that. As far as the 92nd Street Y, we're pretty independent. We get a lot of our donations from private donations, so I don't think we have those problems.
What about the Israel and the Jewish programming that you've been doing in the 92nd Street Y over the course of the year? How did you approach the very controversial issue of Gaza, and what are you thinking of looking forward to what's going to happen in your Jewish and Israeli programming?
I think we have a responsibility both to educate, to give varying points of view, as well as create empathy. We did have a program called the Parents Circle, where we brought together Palestinians and Israelis who have lost children in the conflict. And that, I thought, was very powerful for those who attended. I think it's really important to hear voices from Israel. We had Lucia Harish come and speak with Roni Kuban, which was really interesting because I don't think many people in the audience understand that Israeli Arabs are part and parcel of the population here.
Really? Even on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, they don't know that?
I think there is a myth that they think that you're talking about the West Bank or they're talking about, Gaza. They don't see that there are Israeli Arabs that are part and parcel of the culture. And one of the things that stands out for me was she was telling us, Lucia Arish was telling a story when she hears a hatikva, and she is married to an Israeli, a Jewish Israeli, and they have a son. But when she hears Hatikva, she feels like an outsider because the anthem doesn't resonate for her. But she feels with her son, it will, having both backgrounds. But I think that was an eye-opener to me and to the audience, that we understand that it's not the same for everybody, and that we be a bridge to be able to bring, people together in understanding.
Susan, let's end on a fun note. With all your experience doing programs, Israel, Jewish programs at the Y, if you could put together any program with any number of speakers, with Israelis, with American Jews in dialogue, interviewing one or another, who would you choose, living or dead? If you want to bring someone from the Bible, that's good too.
Well, I do have a fascination for Israeli history, and before I came to the Y, I studied Israeli history in the Jewish Theological Seminary, and I also spent a year here, my junior year, 1978 and 79. That's the year that Sadat came to Israel, and it was a very hopeful time. I would like to bring Menachem Begin, Golda Meir, Ben Gurion. I think that would be fascinating to bring Herzl.
Herzl would be good.
Yeah. Those four leaders to talk about the future of Zionism and the Jewish people.
It would be even more interesting if you made them aware of what was going on now.
Yes, true.
Susan Engel from the 92nd Street Y, thank you. I hope you're having a good time in Israel, and thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
And that's it for this episode of the Haaretz Podcast. Thanks to my guest, Susan Engel, and to producer and editor, Adi Shacham. If you want to keep listening to the podcast, make sure you never miss an episode. Please subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And please leave us a 5-star rating, and that way more people can find us. And to keep up with all the latest news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Alison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.